Hello, I'm back again with an arbitrary interlude. I bet you thought I was gonna say a TV musing or a on music or a blue review uh, or whatever other themed things I do. But you would be wrong if you thought that. So anyway, this is gonna be just kind of a where I'm at with things. What's up with me and what's up with the channel, and what's up with my creative whatevers, and things of note. After I do this, if I still have the energy, I will try to do a specific video, a more, along one of those definite themes, probably an on music. Been compiling, a lot of items from YouTube. Um, Getting into a lot of jazz rock, which you could call it from the early 70s, kind of reacquiring my Mahavishnu Orchestra collection, which I talked about on another on music. But I've also been getting, well, I've been into them for a while, but I'm getting more heavily into this group called Nucleus, um, which is a band that an old friend of mine, Michael, who I don't really see anymore, got me into years ago, showed me some live footage of, and my friend Andrew Nesbitt, aka numerous aliases online, um, enjoys Nucleus as well. So, so I have a group on Facebook called Deep Listening. The group itself has 112 members, I think. The group itself was an outgrowth of a I'm not sure what you call it, but when you are doing a text and you copy a bunch of people all at one time and you give it kind of a group name, and so you all can all text on it and you see each other's texts. My brain's kind of blank as far as the term for it, but anyway, I had have one of those. I've had it for quite a while, and it's called Deep Listening Coven. And members have come and gone, but it's about a dozen members have been pretty stable the whole time. Right now, I have about 15 or 16. Um, but we just share clips, mainly from YouTube, of music that we're listening to or we want to get each other into. It's pretty exciting. So my friend Andrew Nesbitt, he lives in Charlotte, but I never see the guy. Andrew, if you're watching this, man, you got to come on. We need to hang out. Social distancing is fine. Um, but I've known him a long time. I think I mentioned him on another video. But anyway, he and I have exchanged a lot of, uh, we've gotten each other into a lot of movies and music, especially music. And he has a kind of similarly warped sensibility to myself. He has a taste for the prog and the way out, kind of prog short for progressive. Uh, so anyway, Nucleus is a group that we've been kind of sharing albums with each other and re-listening. I'm going to go into more depth on them on a future on music episode after I've kind of re-listened to some of the key early ones. Excuse me, I just got off work. I believe the first five, six, or seven maybe I have downloaded. Elastic Rock being the first. There's some others. Alley Cat. Um, Alley Cat is like their funk album. I love that one. Mid 70s. Um, you know, uh, some other albums. Solar Plexus. I have a list over here. Roots. Well, in order. We'll talk about it later. Solar Plexus, Roots, Labyrinth, Under the Sun, uh, Snake Hips, etc., an Alley Cat, Flagranti Delicto, Out of the Long Dark, and Awakening. Now, I don't have Snake Hips. I don't think I've ever encountered that one on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I have all the others downloaded from Elastic Rock to Awakening. So 10 years, the first 10 years. Um, Part of the time they're known as Ian Carr's Nucleus or Nucleus with Ian Carr because there was a Nucleus band that was like apparently psychedelic rock It was formed in the late 60s, and they put out a self-titled album in 1969 called Nucleus. And apparently they had another album in the early 70s, so there was a clash there. I'm assuming that's what the issue was. Uh, but to me, Nucleus will always be the Ian Carr. Ian Carr is the trumpeter and plays other horns, writes and arranges is the band leader, and he's had numerous lineup changes. He's had some somewhat well-known guitar players like Chris Spedding and especially Alan Holdsworth, who's just a monster and he's passed away, and he's one of the best really ever. A lot of less known members, a lot of British session musicians and jazz cats, and so anyway, I'll talk about them in more depth another time. But I wanted to just kind of throw that out there as something I'm into, that I'm investigating. There's also tonight I'm going to see which ones I actually do have. Now apparently there's like a metal band called Nucleus. Think of the death metal. Yeah, death metal, almost black metal. I'm gonna do a black metal show on music at some point. A lot of it is going to be my strengths. There are releases from the last few years, and in the atmospheric black metal subgenre, which is also known has offshoots or other names such as like progressive black metal or depressive black metal, and black gaze, which is kind of a shoegaze meets black metal. I think there's like folk black metal, which has acoustic stuff, and I think of some other ones. That cosmic black metal, which is like space rock, except it's black metal. Science fiction themes. I love black metal, as I said in my very first On Music video. To me, black metal is finally fulfilling the promise that heavy metal always had. And lately, I've been listening to a lot of early 70s, kind of early metal, proto metal groups. I love those sounds. People who are contemporaries of, but not as well known as Black Sabbath or Deep Purple. But we're definitely heavy metal, as it was defined. And so to me, black metal is like heavy metal taken to an absolute extreme, but not just the heaviness taken to extreme. That was kind of maybe what black metal began as, with kind of offshoot or a particular flavor of death metal, which is kind of like faster, technical kind of stuff with usually like horror or dark lyrics. Of course, the preeminent death metal band was Death. Chuck Schuldiner, who's passed away, and they are brilliant. I'll talk about them on a show too, but I'll probably just talk about them like I will Nucleus, like with other bands. So anyway, that's some music stuff. I've got some great ambient stuff I've been listening to. I finally found some ambient stuff that I can really keep going back to, like the same artists or different albums by those artists. And I'm about to launch into kind of I don't know what you would call this milieu. It had to have a name, but it's kind of the mainly British milieu that started in the 80s and continue on to now, kind of peaked in the 90s, but it's kind of these underground bands that kind of began with kind of abstract music, industrial music, a lot of very intellectual lyrics, deeper surrealistic kind of ideas and concepts. Better just to name some bands and maybe that will help. But like Death in June, Current 93, those two went into the neo folk side of it. But there's also Nurse with Wound, and then I also think of bands like legendary Pink Dots, Hafler Trio. Gosh, I'm probably forgetting a whole ton of them. Controlled Bleeding, though they're a little more squarely industrial, but their early stuff is very much noise. I guess you could say this strain of band probably grew out of Throbbing Gristle's experiments and just the sound, just making anything that sound into music, which is kind of what ambient was about, I think, to begin with. This was a very rough ambient. Um, there was another side of the spectrum with some power electronics, as they call it, and some really nasty lyrics of a group called White House. I have not explored them too much. They're a little headache inducing, but I think that's kind of the point. Um, but anyway, I'm going on that journey to the Nurse with Wound Current 93 Axis. I've had many Current 93 CDs at one time. They're still in maybe my top 25 favorite bands of all time. And one I know a lot about, though it's hard to keep up. They have tons of releases. These guys are all, they're self-publishers of music. I mean, they're totally indie, and they work together to help each other out. Death in June was one of the first, and Death in June originally had a three-man lineup, and they were kind of like a goth slash alternative kind of band, kind of gloomy, heavy bass, driving bass, and atmospheric guitars, and real deep vocals, sonorous vocals with melancholy lyrics. And that configuration of Death in June kind of cracked apart and spawned three bands, and one was Death in June with Douglas P., who's the guy who's worked the most with Current 93, Nurse's Wound. And then there was Sol Invictus, with another of the guys founded, and Sixth Com, Mother Destruction, which is really my favorite of those three. So all this stuff probably deserves its own show or multi-part show. I'd like to share what I know about it. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know more than I do about it. I had a great mentor, John Allen, who was one of the first guys in Charlotte to order and receive these records by these kind of musicians and get into that scene. He worked at a record store, and he really kind of brought some of that into Charlotte and spread it around. Got some of others of us into it, and it was really, there was nothing like it then. And coming kind of full circle, hearing stuff that's come out since, and extreme music, experimental music that's come out since, and then also hearing early stuff, early ambient and early kind of noise, and of course, Throbbing Gristle and such. We've always been into them. Um, it's like a different perspective. Yeah, and those bands have kind of changed. A lot of them have shifted to melodic material, the ones that are still working. And usually band is one person. Like Current 93 essentially is David Tibet. Nurse with Wound is essentially Stephen Stapleton. Death in June is now just Douglas P. and whoever else will play with him. I saw Death in June live in 1997. That was a great show. Non opened. Non is like the pseudonym of Boyd Rice, who's kind of a controversial figure in the industrial music scene. He's an early pioneer of noise, and he's had some controversial political views, and he's also been into kitsch and stuff. So he's kind of an extremist all around. I did get to meet him and talk to him. I'm afraid I asked him really stupid questions that everyone asks him, because he was in the Church of Satan, and I do believe he was one of the key guys who inherited part of the leadership. I think there was, like, I don't know, 10 or 12 who Anton LaVey gave the mantle to. I don't know if this is still active. This is how it was when Anton LaVey died. And I believe, one might have been his daughter. I'm not sure about that. I'm sure she was kind of in charge of his estate. Zena, I think is her name, and he has another daughter, I believe. But anyway, Boyd Rice was one of these people, and allegedly Marilyn Manson was one of these people. So don't let that color you against this stuff. Same with Boyd Rice. I don't really care for Marilyn Manson. He has good taste in a lot of stuff, but I don't care for his work or really him. And I know now he's being reevaluated as kind of a sleazoid of the first degree. I'm turning this down. I want to go a little darker as I talk about darker stuff. I'm getting the light from my other little window here. Boyd Rice has had like he's flirted with kind of Nazism, Nazi imagery, and a lot of punks did, and industrial heads did in the beginning, and the vast majority of them turned out not to be racist or anti-Semitic or anything like that, or you know, proposing some kind of modern Holocaust. Um, but Boyd Rice, he's a hard guy. He's one of those guys like Jim Goad who did Answer Me, the zine Answer Me. He's just a really hard, cynical guy. I mean, he was a person, but then Jim Goad was friendly to be on the telephone. But their work is really dark, and you can kind of feel that they really are into that. There's other more extreme people in the underground that they're affiliated with, like Peter Sotos, who worked with the aforementioned band White House. And Peter Sotos is just a total degenerate. I mean, his stuff is really pushing things for anybody. Pure was his zine, and I think he's collected into some books. But he seemed like an angry, misanthropic, misogynistic person who pretty much advocated physical and violent physical and sexual dominance of the weaker. I'm not really down with that. I mean, in a fantasy milieu where it's consensual, that's fine. But Sotos was really kind of a cruel dude. And in an early issue of Sandman by Neil Gaiman, there's a serial killers convention. It's pretty clever. And there's some fans that come. And one of the guys is based on Peter Sotos, and he has a zine called Chased, based on Pure. And of course, when I met Neil Gaiman in person after interviewing him on the phone in 1997, I asked him, like, is this Peter Sotos and Pure? And he's like, yeah, why not? And he kind of has Dream or Morpheus kind of, kind of slam these people, for being hollow. And of course, his real, demonic force, who's at the serial killer convention, is the Corinthian that Dream created in the Dreaming. And later there was another Corinthian created who was kind of a little more good. But anyway, I'm sure a lot of you guys are Neil Gaiman fans or Sandman fans. So I've gone kind of full circle with Neil Gaiman, and I've been kind of enjoying a little bit of the older Sandman work again after kind of really being kind of not into his stuff, almost put off by his stuff for a number of years. But I'm glad I interviewed him. I'm glad I met him, and he's a real fierce fighter for First Amendment rights, free speech, anti-censorship of anything. And he left Britain to get away from that kind of oppressive, draconian government, and he came to America. And I don't know what he thinks now, 20 odd years after he moved to Minneapolis, if he sees how America is shaping up right before our eyes. But that's for another video, maybe a more controversial, politically oriented one, which I've done a couple, but there will be more. I'm warning you, sorry. So that's some thoughts about music and, a bunch of tangents. So some of that I'll just zero in on in the music show. I finished up the WandaVision pieces, and clocked in at an hour and 6 minutes, which is the second longest video I've done ever posted. The longest being an earlier WandaVision video that was an hour and 10 minutes. I think that was the first one. So the first one was really long. Well, maybe it was the first or the second. I don't remember, but it was definitely one where I kind of went on and on about 2 episodes, but also about the characters themselves and the comic book source material. This one I just kind of went off about the last episode, and then the whole series as a whole, and then kind of examined different angles of it, different perspectives and different reactions I've come across from fandom and other folks. And that was a fun video. It was long. It took me a while to kind of get the steam going on it, but I was happy with at least the last maybe 45 minutes of it. The first little bit, uh, kind of little rushed and a little overly cynical, swaggery, cynical, and sometimes I have that persona when I'm being dismissive of something, and I'm being funny most of the time. I'm just kind of lampooning something, even if it's something I like. And a lot of people don't know how to read me, but I felt comfortable shifting in and out of those kind of personae in these videos for the most part. There have been some I think I've failed miserably, and there's some I've been very nervous, and some have just been like not posted because I felt like they were too much, so and some of the personal ones were a little too much that I didn't post, but even the ones I posted were pretty raw. I was kind of going through a nervous breakdown in real time on video for a couple weeks. Um, so what else is going on? I'm having severe money problems, so I'm trying to beef up my eBay. It's starting to show signs of life again, but it's kind of all over the map. It's not reliable. I've mentioned this before. I had a lot of success with it most of last year. It started slowing down November and December, and unfortunately, I let kind of my personal problems overwhelm me, and I missed work at my day job, and I was kind of depending on eBay to see me through, and it barely did. But by the time I got back to my day job, my eBay just like finished. I mean, it'd be like I'd have one sale a week, or at one point I had no sales for a whole week, a couple of times recently. So I picked up a little. I've had some medium size and some small sales lately. Uh, Not today or yesterday, but the other days, early, like over the weekend and Thursday, Friday, over the week and over the weekend. I sold a comic for a good amount of money, Tales to Astonish number 60, which I hated to part with. That's the first issue of Steve Ditko's run on control, steering the Hulk's destiny. And his run, of course, Stanley, ostensibly scripted the issues, but we know that Steve Ditko, wrote them in the sense of conceived and plotted them out by, drawing them out and everything. And then Stan did his editorial kind of thing on them. But, they're very experimental and they're all over the map. I mean, Stan did have some great dialogue and some great captions to go with it. But as always, with a lot of things, his role as a creator or like detailed plotter is overstated almost always on that older material. I mean, he did sometimes give credit. I mean, near the end of Ditko's runs on Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, he listed Ditko as plotter, and same with listing Wally Wood as plotter on Daredevil, even when Lee took credit for the script. So, but the Ditko Hulk kind of it took the ideas from the very brief 6-issue Hulk series from starting in 1962, and they didn't know what they were going to do from issue to issue with that. It was a Jack Kirby and Stan Lee thing, and it was like every issue the Hulk looked different, he acted different, his personality was different, the way he changed and transformed was different. Sometimes he was a good guy, sometimes he was a villain, sometimes he was just kind of like a cynical, jerk. And then it failed after 6 issues, and he joined the Avengers. And I recently sold Avengers number 2, which is the second and final for many, many years issue in which the Hulk is an Avenger. Today's kids who are watching this movie and reading comics from like the last 15 years, they're going to think, well, Hulk's, often been an Avenger, but that's actually totally untrue. He quit in 1963, and he didn't really work with them again until well into maybe the late 80s, when he had the professor persona of his integrated selves, which is the character that Ruffalo is playing in the latter part of Avengers Endgame. So, yeah, the Hulk is fascinating, and they'd already set up the Gamma base and all this stuff, and Banner and all his problems and his girlfriend, semi-girlfriend, her father, the asshole general. So Ditko kind of added another asshole militarist character, Lynn Talbot, and Rick Jones, the old sidekick, kind of wove in and out of it. In one issue, Rick Jones tells President John F. Kennedy that the Hulk is really Dr. Bruce Banner, and was it Kennedy? No, it was Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy was already gone by then. So it was kind of weird plot point, but so there was some kind of protection going on behind the scenes of the Hulk and Banner, which General Ross didn't know about. Um, the leader was introduced. The Ditko was just full of concepts, and they were fun, 10-page stories. They were Stan Lee said it was the first superhero soap opera. That's how he built it, and basically that's Ditko's long form storytelling style. And as I've said many times, that's my preferred style that I enjoy in comics and in television. And, you know, Marvel has kind of lost their ability to do or interest in doing long form storytelling in the sense of things actually, changing and moving along. Uh, it's been nice to see Breaking Bad recently and see that here you have a show that the protagonist changes a lot. I mean, and you're really deep into his transformations of his character, as he becomes kind of consumed by this life of crime. But he makes it, Bryan Cranston and the writers, make it very believable and feasible. I'm on the beginning of season 5, so when I finish season 5, I'll do a second Breaking Bad video and talk about seasons 4 and 5 and the whole series as a whole, what I think about it. Probably won't be anything new that hasn't been discussed ad infinitum or ad nauseum online, but still, I'm getting my 3 cents there. So that's another thing I've been doing. I've been watching, Breaking Bad, kind of addicted to that. I'm making my way through the massive Godzilla set that I did a show about like a week or two, a couple of weeks ago. That was gifted me by patron Tim Tolbert, and so I think I'm on disc 5 maybe out of 8. So I'm about to begin Godzilla versus Hedorah, which has been my favorite one up until now, and I'm going to revisit it and see what I think. But it's kind of like the psychedelic, ecology conscious entry in the series. It's 1971, and it really is 1971. But yeah, I loved it. I saw it for the first time only a few years ago, and I was kind of blown away by a couple of years ago, really, and I was kind of blown away how different it was. Anyway, I have hopes for that one. After that, I've got some, the rest of the series to explore. So that's kind of what's going on as far as what I'm doing and what I'm planning to talk about in future videos. Um, the soul bearing videos, I do think there will be another one at some point. I'm in a better place than when I did the majority of them, except possibly the last one, which was a big hit as far as views and likes. It kind of surprised me. Um, but that's cool. I mean, I'm flattered that people want to hear about my personal woes uh, more than me talking about media they're probably familiar with. Maybe it's just because they see enough of that and they want to just find something different. And me as a person might be interesting, but I don't know about all that. I'm not giving myself that kind of credit. That's up to you guys to decide whether I'm interesting or not. But it's my channel, and I do whatever the hell I want. But I'm not going to pander or monetize or do any of this stuff, and I'm probably not going to ever upgrade my to a higher tech presentation. Though it's possible, but I'm comfortable right here with this. I really am kind of into the DIY kind of off the cuff, punk rock kind of approach to this. It's more authentic, and authenticity at this point in my life is more important than ever. As a person, as an artist, as a politically aware being, as a a thinking human in a world filled with unthinking humans. So yeah, I'll do another one of those. And then of course the kind of, I haven't really named what the series is. I don't want to say my political videos or my socio-political. I don't know. I'll think of some, you know, silly title to encapsulate it. But I've done one called "What Is Freedom" and one called "What Is Truth." I did record one within the last couple of days that was called "Easily Offended by Reality," and it's kind of taking on this. It's sort of taking on this cancel culture controversy, but it's also taking on the cognitive dissonance being experienced by supporters of allegedly altruistic and political figures, the supposed good guys who we are realizing. Some of us realized it a while back. They're really not the good guys, and um, the duopoly is a myth. So I'm going to explore that more. I talked about that on that video. I may or may not post that video. I need to watch it through and see if I'm happy with how it turned out. It had some angry parts, very emphatic parts. I mean, it wasn't like raving and screaming, but I was definitely impassioned and very, very blunt and straight up about what I believe, as far as things that are right and wrong in the world, as far as corruption and suffering transpiring on our planet, and much of it being perpetrated by America against its own citizens and against the world's citizens. So I hope to hone those. I think they'll get better in time, and I think maybe as people see more behind the curtain of what's happening, because people are getting disillusioned with this new allegedly beneficent administration that they pinned all their hopes on to be the savior of the world, and from the evil Trump. And I mean, Trump is evil, but I'm just saying. They pinned everything on them, and now they're seeing that these people don't give a fuck about them, and really never did. And I knew that anyway. I never supported those people, and or Trump. I've washed my hands with all of it, really, but I keep up with it because I want to see what's going to happen to America and to humanity, because this is where I live, and I'm an artist and a weirdo, and I need to know, what censorship getting ramped up, who's in office that's making laws that are going to be hurtful to me or other minorities or oddballs. Where is the concentration of power, and how are they dispatching it to the people? Are they going to, put police in the cities, the National Guard in the 60s when there were riots? Well, they kind of did some of that during the Black Lives Matter protests, but during the Washington thing in January 6th, since then, from what I understand, Washington, D.C. is like a military fortress, armed to the teeth. So I don't know if that's slacking off here in the last little bit or not, but I get my news from a variety of far left, non-mainstream, but sources that they're far left, but they're very capable of critical thinking. They question official narratives. So someone said once, reality has a liberal bias, and the way liberals have turned out to be, it's a different thing than when I was calling myself a liberal years ago. So I'm thinking, yeah, reality does have a liberal bias right now, because the winner writes history. The victor writes the story, and right now, the Democrats control the political power and the media, and just about everything. It's terrible when the Republicans controlled all of it, but hoping that this will be different is not it's not happening. We're being lied to and ripped off just as much, just by different people. Um, so I've kind of gone into a little mini political rant there. I apologize, but that's maybe a taste of the kind of things I'll be talking about going forward. So I just wanted to check in. Flickr Street is kind of, I'm still writing, vignettes and such, but it's kind of ground to a halt just within the last week or so. I haven't been getting up to Subway and doing my weekly or bi-weekly or twice a week ritual of writing for a few hours there in a peaceful environment and with good food. And but I did make a plan, outline today of my plans, which are really reiterations of ones I've had been working on for months and months, and some to varying degrees of success. So I'm hoping to just get on it. The financial thing is putting a strain on me, and so I haven't been as quite as creative. But I mean, everything's still in my head, and there's a lot of it on paper and on electronic paper in my computer. And I still intend to upload massive works to my official website. One is ready to upload. I just have not done it, because I've been too slack, about getting the font right and the fonts right and the colors right, and deciding if I'm going to put any illustrations in it or do any new illustrations for it. Those are the things, the piddly things that have been keeping me from doing it, really, and just general malaise. But it's ready to go, and then when it's up, I've already started the next version of that, which will be that's a 75,000 word opus. So the next version will probably be 100,000 words, and it'll be a more definitive view of Flickr Street. Whereas this other one, I call it Flickr Street: The Birth, kind of take off on Twin Peaks: The Return, because it's kind of a recitation, more or less in chronological order, of the events that transpire in that reality. But I need to go deeper, the kind of stuff that I'm writing on a daily basis on the modern material. But I want to apply that to the historical material and keep, weave the threads together, and that's important to me. And it's becoming easier and easier. The connections are always being made up here, and that's really kind of how I operate and always have when I've been at my best creating material for that, or any material really. So that's the sum of them on everything now. Give a shout out to a few of my regular homies, Sean Lee Levin. You guys can clap. And Tim Tolbert, Tim McLean, Andrew Nesbitt. I don't talk to them as much, but they are some local, longtime, comrades. Rhett Thompson and Doug Williams. And a shout out to Bree, who has followed me through all this stuff and been a number one fan of my material, and I appreciate it. I appreciate her. And I'm forgetting a lot of other people, but those are kind of the main people I interact with on a daily or weekly basis. So, and my friend Brad at work, coworker, he's been supportive, and he has a channel called Based on Brad, where he kind of does reaction videos and analyses of video games, and he's hardcore into it. He's very detailed. He knows the technology behind making them, and he knows he just knows that inside out, which is a world that I do not know very well. But I wanted to give him a plug. Yet another channel that I recommend. And of course, Girl Behind the Counter, I'm going to recommend yet again, because she just put up a video on Singapore Sling, which is an outrageous movie that I like. And I haven't watched all the video. I will soon, But anyway, I will talk to everyone via this medium. very soon.